this phone at the price point, at the specs that it has, is giving a lot of other phones a run for its money. The number one competitor, obviously, is the iPhone SE, the 2020 iPhone SE. What's the better overall phone here? And I think my answer for this is it depends. It depends. So this is an article from Mac Rumors. Could it be biased on Apple? Maybe, but let's see what they have to say. I haven't had a chance to read this, so let's get into it. The iPhone SE is a $400 phone versus the Pixel 4a at $350. We picked up one of the new 4a smartphones and thought we'd check it out to see how it measures up to the iPhone SE, given that the two devices have such similar price points. So the first thing that we can talk about here is, well, I already pointed it out, is the price. The iPhone SE is a $400 phone that has 64 gigs of internal storage. The Pixel 4a is a $350 phone with 128 gigs of internal storage. The Pixel 4a is $50 cheaper and has double the internal storage. So keep that in mind. If you want to get a iPhone SE with 128 gigs of internal storage, you're talking $450. You're talking a $100 price increase. If we're talking about the display, the Pixel 4a features a 5.81-inch OLED panel, which is larger than the iPhone's 4.7-inch LCD display. And I wish there was a better picture that showed the two here, but you can already see the iPhone SE has a huge bezel on the top. It has a huge bezel on the bottom where the fingerprint reader is there as well, while the Pixel 4a has a much more modern 2020 design when it comes to its display. It is definitely more, screen to body ratio than what the iPhone SE offers. Again, for people who aren't aware, this iPhone SE is basically an iPhone 8 that had its guts removed and it was replaced with more, up-to-date specs. So when it comes to a straight display quality comparison, you might think the 4a would be leagues better with the OLED panel, but both are close in quality. The 4a wins out with OLED, but the iPhone SE's LCD panel still looks good. And I wasn't expecting the OLED panel on the Pixel 4a to be, amazing. I'm actually surprised that in their testing that the LCD panel still is very favorable or still very comparable to the Pixel 4a. I mean, I can just kind of just have to trust with what they say because I don't have an iPhone SE or a Pixel 4a in front of me, so I can't compare the two. I would have just assumed that an OLED panel would have easily had a better display in terms of quality versus an LCD. But it says here the iPhone SE has a Touch ID home button in the bottom bezel, and the 4a also uses a fingerprint sensor, but it's located at the rear of the device. Touch ID beats out most other fingerprint sensors when it comes to accuracy and phone unlocking time, and there's no exception here. Google's fingerprint sensor is fine, but Touch ID is more accurate and less prone to failure. I don't really know about that. I really don't know. I know Touch ID is good, and I know Touch ID is excellent when it comes to security and accuracy, but on the Pixel 3 that I've owned, the fingerprint reader was great. Not to mention the fact that the fingerprint reader does more than just unlock your phone, but you're also able to use it to swipe down and swipe up for notifications, something that I've talked about many times. One of the things I love about it. Also, for me personally, I think the placement of a rear fingerprint reader makes a lot more sense than having a fingerprint reader on the front. We can debate this because there's also the fact that, if your phone's sitting on a table, then a front fingerprint reader makes more sense. When I put my hand in my pocket, I'm already reaching for the fingerprint reader, and by the time I pull it out of my pocket, the phone is already unlocked. So for me personally, I think the rear fingerprint reader is a plus. I would rather have that than having it on the front. Not to mention the fact that putting the fingerprint reader or putting Touch ID on the front completely destroys the display. It takes away from the all-screen display that the Pixel 4a gives you. To keep costs low, Google built the 4a out of plastic. So when it comes to quality, the iPhone SE's glass and aluminum design wins out. It looks and feels like a more premium smartphone than the Pixel 4a, but the glass has more potential to break. So that's a fair point. When it comes to build quality, and I think we all knew this, when it comes to build quality, the iPhone SE is going to take the crown here. Glass and aluminum compared to plastic on the 4A, but there's also the argument that this is an outdated phone. The design is outdated by how many years now? Which is why if we look at this photo here, the bezels are ridiculous. It's still not the worst design in the world. I use the iPhone SE. I bought the red iPhone SE, and I thought it was good. I actually enjoyed using it. I didn't look at the display and I was like, man, this display is so tiny. That didn't really register in my head when I was using it. It still was decent and it still did what I needed it to do. But if I'm looking at both of these phones right here, if you're looking at both of these phones right now and you ask me which one I would take the Pixel 4a. Just for its bigger display. Look at this footprint. Look at this form factor on this phone. This is still a small phone. This is a small phone with a really big display. This is something that I will say here. This is something that iPhone SE users, original iPhone SE users, wish that they had on the new iPhone SE. I guess I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like what people wanted on the iPhone SE was the same smaller phone, but with a bigger display. And yeah, the Pixel 4a isn't the smallest phone in the world, but it's still small in terms of, today's modern age of big ass screens. The iPhone SE is equipped with Apple's latest A13 chip, which is blazing fast. It puts the iPhone SE on par with Apple's flagship iPhones when it comes to performance, a factor that makes the iPhone SE's $399 price a good deal for those who are more focused on performance. The 4A has a Snap 730, but it doesn't perform at the level of the A13. No, not at all. You may not notice a significant difference in everyday use, but there are some tasks where the iPhone SE will outshine the 4A, which is just a bit laggier and less smooth. So that's the thing is there's no doubting that. There's no debating this at all. The A13 chipset that is in the iPhone SE is leaps and bounds better than the Snapdragon 730. Let me put it this way. If we're talking right now, if we're talking about a phone right now and you just do things like text message and check your email and check Twitter and, watch a YouTube video and check Instagram, right? I'm sure the Pixel 4a will be more than fine for you. Will it maybe lag and stutter? Maybe. And that's something that I'll have to test out once I start using it and start really heavy, using it as my daily, because this will be my daily driver for a bit when I get this phone. And obviously this is not going to be a problem for the iPhone SE. All the things that I just listed that, will be okay for the 4A will be more than fine on the iPhone SE. When it comes to heavier things though, if you're talking about using a phone and you're multitasking, if you're talking about gaming on a phone and using something that's going to be more processor heavy, the iPhone SE is going to be the phone to use. Okay. So yes, performance wise, gaming wise, the iPhone SE is the phone to pick. But I have to expound on that. I have to talk about this more because we're not just talking about when I said earlier, if I'm talking about today, that's today, 2020, August 7th, 2020. Today, it'll be fine. Next month, it'll be fine. What is the Pixel 4a going to look like a year from now? Even after getting its OS update, what is the Pixel 4a going to look like 2 years from now when it receives its second OS update? Or 3 years from now? Is the Pixel 4a still going to hold up after 3 years? That's the real question. That's the real question. Will this iPhone SE hold up 3 years from now, performance-wise, multitasking wise, gaming wise? I am pretty sure it will. I'm pretty sure it will. It's optimized for it. I think in terms of longevity, strictly in terms of longevity, the iPhone SE is going to be the phone to get. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about the Pixel 4a is I'm not saying that it's not going to hold up a year from now, 2 years from now, or even 3 years from now. I just question its longevity. I question how good the phone will perform 3 years from now. The thing I have to point out here is, if you are actually buying a phone and you know you're going to keep that phone for 3+ years, for 4 years, for even 5 years, iPhones are known to last 5 years and get updates for 5 years and last even longer than that. You might have to look into upgrading your Pixel 4a, maybe not a year from now, but maybe 2 years from now. Maybe 2 years from now, it's not performing as well as you originally had it. I'm not saying that's going to be the case. There is just a possibility that that might happen. And that's for the pure fact of its chipset. And that might not be the case for many people, especially if all you're doing is checking Twitter and checking Instagram and watching a YouTube video and texting and checking your email. If it's as simple as that, I think the phone is going to be great for you, and I think it's going to last you a long time. And it's the reason I bought the phone as well, because it packs a lot of specs for the price. If we're talking about pure performance, we're talking about gaming on a phone, then the iPhone SE might be the better choice there. When it comes to battery life, the 4A has a 3140 milliamp hour battery, while the iPhone SE has an 1800 milliamp hour battery. So it says here the Pixel 4a had noticeably better battery life in his testing. This doesn't surprise me either. The battery life I knew was going to be better on the 4a. I know that the battery on the iPhone SE was nowhere close to even being great. So these are other things that I have to point out as well. If wireless charging is important to you, you can get wireless charging with the iPhone SE. If you're tired of connecting your cable, there you go. For me, it's not a deal breaker. I don't really use wireless charging often. I'll use it here and there, but it's not the end of the world for me. To point out, the iPhone SE is also, it's dust and water resistant, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So it's I knew it wasn't IP68, but it is IP67 dust and water resistance, which again speaks to its build quality, speaks to the quality of, the care they put into the materials or whatever. So wireless charging, IP67 dust and water resistance, and a pretty badass chipset. Right. So that's what the iPhone SE has going for it. We can sit here and we can talk about like the nuances when it comes to these day shots, but I feel like the iPhone SE is able to hold its own when it comes to day shots for sure. Easily hold its own. If we're talking about night shots, it's going to be a different story here. And it looks like they're not even talking about it, which is unfortunate. So let me just put my 2 cents in here as well. When we're talking about the camera, the Pixel 4a, that is what the Pixel is known for. It's great camera. And I ranted about this yesterday for a while, and I'm going to rant about it today too, because when we talk about the camera, I'm not just talking about photos. The Pixel 4a is going to have the better camera when it comes to photos. When it comes to day shots, I think the Pixel 4a and iPhone SE will be similar. The Pixel 4a will still edge it out. I think in more cases than not, the Pixel 4a will edge it out. In portrait mode, that has yet to be seen. That's something that I'm going to have to test out. But at night, the Pixel 4a will most likely trounce the iPhone SE. Not saying that the iPhone SE is not capable of taking night shots, because it can, just it doesn't have night mode. It's not able to capture shots like the Pixel 4a will in the evening, or in low light scenarios, in low light situations. So there, the Pixel 4a has it beat. But when it comes to a camera, it's not just about photos. It's also about video. When it comes to video, I am fairly certain that the iPhone SE will still beat the Pixel 4a when it comes to video. The iPhone SE will still perform better in video quality, in probably stabilization as well. And that's something that the Pixel 4 or the Pixel lineup in general, Pixel 4a, and I don't know if this is going to get corrected in the Pixel 4a 5G or in the Pixel 5, but video is something that I need to keep pointing out until they get that corrected. I said this yesterday. The thing that I find very annoying is the fact that I don't want to pull my Pixel out when I want to take day shots or night shots, but then I have to pull my iPhone out when I want to do video. Or lately, in my case, the Pixel 4a or the iPhone 11 Pro is the phone I pull out at night over my Pixel 4, because the iPhone 11 Pro, at least in my experience, has proven to have the better camera at night than the Pixel 4. I don't want to have a phone where I have to like pull a specific phone out to get something better. I want a phone that can give me all of that. And that's what I'm hoping the Pixel 5 will give me, but I don't know if that's going to be the case this year. But it's also good to point out that Apple's ecosystem is polished very, very well. Apple's ecosystem is always on point, it seems, more times than not when you compare it to Android. We're talking about ecosystem support, software support, and Apple guarantees iOS updates for years to come. And I think that number is around 5 years at this point. So the iPhone SE should be supported until at least 2024. Android smartphones don't often get as many updates, but Google is better about providing new software for Pixel phones and has pledged to provide updates for the Pixel 4a for at least 3 years. So in terms of straight up support, in terms of like software updates or whatever, the iPhone again will best the Pixel there. It depends on what's important to you. If you're looking, if you know you're going to be holding a phone for more than 3 years, more than 4 years, then maybe the iPhone SE is the better choice here. I would just recommend that maybe you spend the extra $100 and get more storage. But see, then you're talking $450 for a phone. And I feel like there are other options that you can buy at $450, unless you want to be stuck. Stuck is maybe not the right word. Unless you want an Apple phone. If an Apple phone is what you need, then maybe that's the choice to get. But when we start going from $350, it's not even $350. It's $400. Actually, Brian sent me an article earlier today that was saying that you can get a OnePlus 7T on T-Mobile right now, just the T-Mobile version, for $400. And it's like, man, like, well, the camera's not going to be as good, but I guess what I'm trying to say is you just got to think of the other options that are out there. At $350 for the Pixel 3a or the Pixel 3a, at $350 for the Pixel 4a, there aren't a lot of other phones that can beat its specs, its its whatever, like camera performance, amongst other things that are going for it at that price point. But I'm very excited for the 4a because of its price and because of what it offers, and because at that price point, I just feel like not many phones can be beat there.